Sandhan. All Gujarat Integrated Classroom.
સેટેલાઇટના માધ્યમથી જોડતી કડી એટલે સંધાન.
Vande Gujarat.
Hello, my dear students of English literature. Today we are going to look at a very special genre of English literature. I call it special because it's very rarely that we find that a particular genre exists, begins, and almost dies a natural death within a single age. And when we talk of the age that I'm talking of today is the neoclassical age. And the genre that I'm talking of is the periodical essay. The essay you all know because you have read essays, you have read about essays, you know different kinds of essays. You probably know the father of the English essay, Sir Francis Bacon. You know Montaigne, the French essayist who is considered the father of the essay in Europe. You know the personal essay of Lamb. But today we are going to look at the periodical essay. Isn't that an interesting combination? The essay, yes. And why periodical? Because it was published in the periodicals of that period. Which period again? The 18th century, also referred to as the neoclassical age, also called the age of Queen Anne, because it was Queen Anne who was then ruling. It was also the age of prose, remember, because this is when the novel made its first beginnings. But of course, today we are going to look at the periodical essay. In order to understand the periodical essay, we must have some understanding of the age, the 18th century, the neoclassical age. Let's have a look at what was happening. We have to look at it socially also, and then, of course, look at literature. What was happening then? Remember, the Industrial Revolution had already occurred, and this led to the invention of the printing press. Any idea, my dear students, how they exchanged any writings, any creative work before that? How did they do it? Well, they had to make copies. And remember, there were no Xerox machines, so copies were not made on the Xerox machine as you do today. You had to write, literally write. I'm not even sure we had carbon paper, so we had to make copies. So suddenly now, with the invention of the printing press, it was possible to have journals. It was possible to have books for public consumption. Simultaneously, socially, what was happening was there was an increase in the middle class, right? So the spread of education and an increase in the middle class happening in this century obviously meant that there was an increase in the number of readers. Increase in the number of readers with the printing press, so increase in the number of in reading material, increase in people who could afford to buy, so the middle class, and then the spread of education. Another interesting characteristic of this period was what is referred to as the coffee houses. For those of you who are familiar with the Gujarati word kitli, where people meet at tea stalls just to have a cup of tea. No, my dear students, they meet and tea is probably an excuse because they spend hours standing there discussing everything under the sun. What do they discuss? Politics, religion, social, educational policies, the people, corruption, what's happening in the world, everything. So also in the 18th century, there was a sudden growth of coffee houses. So people did not have to meet only in the drawing rooms, in the sitting rooms, in the lounges of the rich. They could now meet. And these coffee houses were very popular because they were also frequented by some of the writers of the period. So you had Dr. Johnson probably sitting and talking. He was talking to his friends. He was talking to people who shared his ideas, who wanted to know his ideas. But what was happening at the same time? There were many others who were there in the coffee houses, probably sipping their own coffee or tea, but at the same time, part of the audience listening to these learned people. There were artists, there were painters, there were writers, there were novelists, there were essayists. All of them met in the coffee houses. So there was topics that had to be discussed. There were people who were discussing them. And there was the growth of periodicals at the same time. What do I mean by a periodical? Today we call them magazines, maybe. Maybe we call them weeklies, monthlies, fortnightlies. But remember, it was in this period, in the 18th century, that the first periodical appeared. Periodical, as you can understand, as you can guess, is something which has a periodicity about its publication. That means it is published at regular intervals, over regular periods. And these periodicals, in those days, were something like our newspapers. People got used to reading it. Many of us cannot do without a newspaper. Whatever might be the technology that is there, yet holding a newspaper in your hands with your first cup of coffee or tea is very much a part of many people's lives even today. So you had the growth of periodicals. Another interesting feature of this period is the introduction of what all of us are very familiar with today, and that is letters to the editor. Remember, if you want to say something and you're not a writer, you're not a famous person, who's going to publish what you want to write? So what do? You write a letter to the editor where you express your views. You have an opinion, you have a viewpoint, and you want to express it. So there was an introduction of, for the first time, letters to the editor. Let us also remember that the 18th century was the age of prose. What is so great about it? What is so special about it? You students of the 21st century may well wonder. But remember, earlier, poetry was the favored, was the popular, was the most common kind of writing. In some ways, the printing press and the possibility of it spreading out to a greater reading public was responsible, indirectly, for the increase in prose writing. Remember Richardson? Remember the writers of that period. Some of you have read novels like Tom Jones, Clarissa, and you know what I'm talking about. So it was the age of prose and simultaneously the age of journalism. Journalistic writing is different from creative writing, and it is in this period that you had for the first time increase in journalism. Which came first? Is it because people were capable of writing journalistic writing that the periodicals came? Or is it because the periodicals came that journalistic writing increased? My dear students, it's like asking the usual, the old age question, which came first, the egg or the chick? Remember, these were things which were happening simultaneously. So with this background of what was happening socially, economically in a way, we can move on to the literature of the period and look at the periodical essay. Let me begin by attempting to define, to give you, because I have not defined it, Samuel Johnson has defined it. What is it that the periodical essay is all about? It's not a 4-word, 5-word definition, so you will have to read it carefully to understand what it means. Let us read it together. I'm going to read it slowly so that you can look at each word and see what it means when put together. The periodical essay presented general knowledge appropriate for circulation in common talk. So remember, 3 words, 3 phrases which are very important. 1, it was general knowledge. 2, it was appropriate for circulation. 3, common talk. So there was nothing highbrow about it. There was nothing that, oh, you can't understand it, because it was common talk. It was general knowledge. This accomplishment, Johnson goes on, this accomplishment had only rarely been achieved in an earlier time, and now was to contribute to political harmony by introducing subjects to which faction had produced no diversity of sentiment, such as literature, morality, and family life. There are certain areas where we automatically take sides. When I say areas, I mean topics. There are certain subjects where we automatically take sides. One very important thing could be politics. Are you a Tory or are you a Whig? Would have been the common kind of talk in the Britain that we are thinking of in the 18th century. Well, now it was not such subjects, and therefore there could be harmony, because we are talking about literature, morality, and family life. Let's look at another example of the definition, an attempt to define what the periodical essay meant. The periodical essay has been aptly, correctly, appropriately described as dealing with morals and manners, but it might in fact deal with anything that pleased its author. So, well, if you want to give a general topic, we could say that the periodical essays dealt with morals and manners. But that does not mean that every author, every writer, every essayist of the periodical essay was forced to restrict himself to just that. No. It covered, and then what about the length? How much would people want to read early in the morning? It covered usually not more than the 2 sides of a folio half sheet. So to understand it in our language, we could say 2 columns. Normally, it was shorter than that. It might be published independent of other material, as was The Spectator, except for advertising. Or it might be the leading article in a newspaper. He's giving you all the possibilities in this definition. Since most of us have not seen a periodical essay, though it would be a good idea to go to a good library and see some of those, not really manuscripts, but copies of manuscripts that some of your college libraries might have, or some good books might have in good libraries. What are we talking about? What was the length of the periodical essay? 2 columns, but it could be shorter than that. Imagine an entire paper which had just an essay, and people still bought it. People still wanted to read it. Can you imagine how much of interest the periodical essay must have generated in the 18th century? So, it could be published independent of other material, as was The Spectator, or it might be the leading article in a newspaper. So let's imagine a newspaper running into 4 pages maybe. 3 pages would have other things, would have news of the area, of the region, of the country. And then there would be this main essay, which would be the leading article in a newspaper. I hope that's clear. What are we looking at? We are trying to understand what the periodical essay was about, number 1. 2, how long was it? 3, where was it published? 4, was it always a part of a newspaper, or did it have enough importance? And look at that. The example that is given to you is The Spectator, because I'm going to be talking at length a little later in this lecture about The Spectator. So what was the first periodical? I'm going to talk about The Spectator and The Tatler and The Review, as I told you. But there is a forerunner. Remember, when we think of ages, we also look at people who were pre to the age. What I mean is, suppose you're thinking of the Romantic age in English literature, and you think of Wordsworth and Shelley and Coleridge and Keats and Byron and all of them. You also have a pre-Romantic poet like Thomas Gray. So what would we say? He is a forerunner. You can understand the word, my dear students. For means before. So he comes before the actual periodical essay as we know it today. And what was the name of that paper, of that periodical? It was called the Athenian Mercury. Remember, Greece was very much a living presence. Later, we know a poet like Keats who wrote about the Elgin marbles. Anyway, that's another story. But to come back to the periodical and to see what was the first periodical or a forerunner to the periodicals that we know, like the Spectator and the Tatler, the Athenian Mercury began publication in 1691. So remember, it's still the 17th century, not even the 18th century. So it's very much a forerunner. Why was it published? The purpose of resolving weekly all the most nice and curious questions proposed by the ingenious. So is set as its aim, as its goal, to resolve the questions. I'm going to give you some of the interesting questions a little later. So this followed a question and answer or an advice column. You know, the agony aunts who came later into the picture. But here it was an advice column which had questions and answers. Remember, I told you about the letters to the editor where you could write. So here you could write and you could send questions. So this Athenian Mercury was one of the first periodicals to solicit questions from its audience. Readers submitted questions anonymously, and the questions were answered by a collection of experts known as the Athenian Society or simply the Athenians. I hope you see the point of it all. We don't know who asked the question. We don't know who's answering the question. But the readers, including the person who sent the question, could look at the questions and could look at the answers. So the questions were answered by experts. For a moment, pause to imagine what those questions could have been in the 18th century